This video is about the hentai writing of Warcraft. I know what you're thinking, but it's not about sexualization. It's bad, but that's not what I'm talking about. Let me explain. If you didn't know, hentai is a slang word for Japanese adult cartoons. Aside from its overly dramatic female cast and some weird elements, in my shameful experience with the medium, I've also noticed that the characters tend to describe what is going on and how they're feeling a little too much. However, people don't do that in their everyday lives. What we say is a reaction to the outside world, not a description of it. That is what I mean by hentai writing. Characters describing what is going on instead of reacting to it. For example, if I stub my toe, I would scream out in pain or curse or whatever. The last thing I would say is, I stubbed my toe. I'm sure you saw the thumbnail and the title of the video before clicking on this, and here's when you should be wondering, what does it have to do with Warcraft? Sadly, a lot. At the ending of the Dragonflight expansion in the game, players were met with this cutscene. Long story short, it was really bad. People were making fun of the theme, characters ending each other's sentences, and the completely different tone it has from the rest of the game. It just wasn't Warcraft for them. But not many have noticed that it is also up to its throat full of hentai writing. The bad kind. The characters in this scene only describe what is going on instead of reacting to it. Instead of talking with each other, they almost actively talk to the audience and unpromptedly declare what's going on. You know, like a hentai. Compare that to the famous Ratgate cinematic. Aside from it being about a cool siege into the Icecrown Citadel, the writing is also good. The soldiers show relief and encouragement when they see High Lord Bolvar Fordragon. Instead of directly telling us of his strength and fame, they show it in the most natural way possible. Instead of telling us that danger is coming, they show us his fear. Again, the characters reacting to the scene, not describing it. The Horde rides in not to help the Alliance, but for their own glory. It is a matter of honor for them, so they act accordingly to that. The banter between the two shows us that the cooperation is not found on camaraderie but a friendly competition. I could go on for hours, but dissecting the frog kills the joke, so I'll stop here. When the dialogues are written not as the character but for the audience, the thin string holding the immersion is cut and we are left with an awkward feeling because what is essentially in front of us is a sock puppet show. But awkward dialogue is not the only effect of hentai writing. It also robs characters of their voice. You see, characters need to have their own voice and vocabulary. They need to express their interesting identity through what they say and how they say it. And since nobody talks primarily in expositions, the character it builds is also a nobody. When the character is well written, you should be able to hear what they say and reasonably figure out who said it. But when exposition statements are overused, you can't make of anything from that. To prove my point, I have a challenge for you. Try to figure out who said this line.
You really must be more vigilant about uninvited guests, my lady.
Can you guess who this is? The Victorian-style euphemisms and the sarcastically polite tone gives it away that it was said by none other than Daddy Natterus himself. But if I wanted to make this line worse, I can just use an exposition. How about, we're not alone, or there are intruders here? It just doesn't have the same air. When characters have their own voice, we can infer their personality, emotions, and general vibe from what they say and how they say it. The original line tells us that Sire Natterus is an aristocrat, probably from a Victorian England-like society. His explicit avoidance of rude, nay, even normal language, highlights his prudish and snobby attitude. Lacking this, we cross the hentai territory where we don't care about the characters and are simply in for the plot. And in my opinion, the plot means nothing when the characters are boring. Speaking of boring characters, I have another clip to show you. This is from June of 2025 during the War Within expansion, roughly 6 or 7 months before the making of this video. What particularly caught the eye of the players were its eye-watering PowerPoint-esque animation. But judging by the fact that it's in my video, it wasn't just the animation. The problem is sort of different from the hentai writing, but has the same root problem of telling and not showing. On paper, this clip says everything the writers wanted to say. Maron Trollbane is a part of an extremist group called the Red Dawn and disagrees with Faerwin Lothar. They fight over something and Faerwin wins. Okay, but we don't feel very involved in this. We feel like we're watching the daily news almost. I would like to know what caused Maran to become a human supremacist, why Faerwin isn't, what are they afraid of, proud of, what's their skin in the game. I would like to quote a line to tell you what works, but there simply aren't any. It's just a political disagreement masquerading as a character strife, because they're just a personification of ideas, a one-dimensional pretentious philosophical mouthpiece. They don't have any beliefs, personalities, and backstories. They simply are not characters. But I know, and you know, someone with an abundance of character. For example, Garrosh Hellscream, especially this cutscene. It's not only from the same game, the structure flows exactly like the last clip. The two warriors of opposite ideals clash and one wins, but this one doesn't make you cringe. It's cool, it's awesome, and it's badass.
Step aside, Pandaren. You confront a force beyond reckoning. Your father dabbled in powers beyond reckoning. Where is he now?
Because Garrosh genuinely gets angry at Taranzu's jab. It's because Taranzu is genuinely disgusted by Garrosh. You can feel their emotions just orchestrating the narrative flow into an exhilarating clash between warriors. The subtle smirks and the facial expressions from Taranzu, the timing of the angry roar from Garrosh, highlights these emotional beats masterfully. The success of Warcraft as a franchise was a feeling of belonging, a feeling as if you knew the characters like you know them IRL. But if the dialogues are written lazily like the newer ones, that connection separates. The first thing I've ever seen from Warcraft as a franchise was the opening cinema for the Night of Campaign in Frozen Throne.
Betrayer. In truth, it was I who was betrayed. Still I am hunted. Still I am hated. Now my blind eyes see what others cannot. Sometimes the hand of fate must be forced.
Though it is all expositions, it's perfectly fitting because Illidan is the type to talk like that. He's a miserably bitter person and it showed that masterfully. That's what a great exposition does, people. It achieves more than just lore dumping. This is what Blizzard used to deliver. Somehow, in these 20 plus years, the studio that gave us this forgot the simplest rule in storytelling that any amateur YouTuber would warn you of. Show, don't tell. People agree that Blizzard has a huge problem writing in general, but seldom do realize how deep it goes. The main discussions include lore inconsistencies, cosmic metaphysics, a mage riding a magical wheelchair that flies instead of just flying. These things irk me, yes, but when they just keep pumping out bland and boring dialogues, we are losing interest. Without emotional involvement, a story can quickly turn to something like a news article. A and B happens, but there is little to no emotions involved. We don't care, and that invites apathy. Video games are an art form. It needs a soul. Keeping track of what is going on and around Azeroth is less important than keeping track of characters we grew up with, how they're feeling, who they've become, what their insecurities are. Because that is the only thing binding us to this fiction world. And why would we care for any of this theology when they talk like hentai characters? This is exactly why I focus on character perspectives on this channel. A good plot is nice and old, and every now and then we like to watch movies like Ocean's 11, but I believe real, consistent characters with interesting ambitions and especially insecurities we can relate to, empathize with, are what stays with us in the end. I'd like to break down those characters here so that I can share with you guys, hopefully, something you missed in them. As always, take care, goodbye.